want to drink after this, but before we do that, we're going to have some fun today. When I used to come to these summits, I would always look forward to learning from the coaches who were the leaders in our field. What exercises would they tell me to do? How were they programming? But then what I realized, after every single one of these workshops, Chris had a happy hour. And that's when I started connecting with some people who became great friends for quite some time. So after the happy hour, there typically was another happy hour after that. So I was at the Stanford Business Workshop, and I was having such a good time with this guy, Ron, up here, that we decided to go to the hotel bar and get another drink. And I go, Ron, what do you want to drink? What do you want to drink? And he goes, Brandon, rule number 1, you never ask a sponsor for a drink. He said, the sponsor always buys you the drink at these things. I said, Ron, I got you. And after that, me and Ron had a mutual respect that still goes to this day. And when I met Ron that day, he was like, Brandon, I've had such a good time hanging out with you this weekend. What do you think about going out to dinner with the sponsors and then Tom Plummer, who was running the business workshop? I said, you know what? I would love to go, but I gotta go home real quick. So I went home, I changed, I'm 20 minutes late for the dinner, and I walk into a table like that. And Tom goes, dinner's on the new guy. And for those of you who know Tom Plummer, he likes some pretty classy restaurants. So I'm 23 years old at the time. I had never been to a Capital Grille. Now, you're shaking your head like, yeah, you know what I was getting into. So I go to the Capital Grille, it's like $50 steaks, $60 steaks, $100 plus dollars, bottle of wine. And Tom goes, dinner's on the new guy. And the whole time, he was making soft plugs at me saying, dinner's on the new guy, dinner's on the new guy. And I'm thinking, okay, no problem, I got this. The only problem was my credit card, my one credit card at the time, it only had a $1,000 limit. So they slip the check holder right in front of me, the waiter does, and I open it up and it says $1,100. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do here? So I had two choices. I could play the bluff or I could fold the cards. So I put my card in there, I slid it to the middle of the table, and they all look at me like, who is this guy? And I'm thinking the same thing, who is this guy? And so one of the sponsors looks at the check, he looks at my card, and he couldn't believe that I just put my card in there for $1,100. And this was before tip, by the way. And so he throws my card back, and 3 of the sponsors and Tom, they all chip in to pay the dinner. And that was a lesson that transitioned my motivation for the rest of my life. I said, you know what, one day I want to be able to pay that tab. And now the last 3 years for my conference, I've paid a tab that's over 17 grand for the dinner. And that was a big motivator for me. And a lot of you are seeing these trainers, these therapists that are very inspiring, they're very motivating. But when you go into the networking setting and you see what their life is like outside of work, you start to get inspired. Hey, what's your family life like? Hey, when you were on your way up, who were some mentors that you had? And you start to get to know people on a whole different level when you're able to network. So 2 years ago, I was at the Providence Perform Better Summit near where I live, and Chris goes, you know what? My favorite talk that I've ever heard at the Perform Better Summit was when Bill Parisi did a talk on networking. And here I am getting ready to watch Charlie Weingroff, a friend, a mentor, and I'm so excited to hear him talk about breathing. And then Chris starts talking about how his favorite talk he ever heard was on networking. And that really resonated with me because I realized that all the success that I had in my career was because of the relationships that I had built. See, when I was 20 years old, I was the guy who would go to class and I would go right like this. because I was so sick and tired of learning information that wasn't applicable to what I was doing on my internships. And this guy, he's a guest speaker, probably a reason why I'm so passionate about speaking. He comes to my university, he's about 65 years old, and he starts talking about how when he wanted to have success, he decided to do this one thing. He was a golf pro, so he taught people how to play golf. And he said he wanted to be the best in the world. He said he wanted to be the #1 person at teaching golf in the world. So what did he do? He wrote down the top 10 people in the world who he thought were the best at that. And then all he did was focusing on learning, observing, shadowing, studying, and meeting those 10 people. So here I am, the kid who would always fall asleep in class, to the kid who's the most awoke in that class. And I said, well, why don't I do that? Why don't I just go learn from the best of the best? So at 20 years old, all of a sudden I had no fear. I said, who can I reach out to instead of who won't talk to me? I said, who can I reach out to instead of who won't talk to me? So I said, let me start reaching out to this top 10 list. 3 weeks into that, this guy, Randy Myers, he was a golf fitness guy. He was someone who I really idolized in that field. I find out his email. He responds, never responds to my next one. I follow up. He emails me back at 6:45 in the morning. Now, not many college students get up at 6:45 in the morning, but for some reason, I did that morning. And he said, hey, I had a client cancel. I could take a phone call with you in 15 minutes if you can take it. I said, yes, sir. So there I am. I hop on the phone call with Randy Myers, a guy that I idolize. Now, I understand you may not know who he is, but think of someone you idolize. And all of a sudden, you're on the phone with this person. He told me every single thing I needed to do to be successful in that field. And what did I do? I implemented what he said. 6 years later, at 26 years old, I get voted top 50 in America for golf fitness trainers. I was the youngest person on that list. And I'm not saying that to add credit to my speech. I'm saying that because the only reason that happened is because I met him, and then I focused on meeting my top 10 list after that. So shortly after I meet Randy, I said, who can I reach out to next? Who can I reach out to next? I go study from Binghamton University. I go to Binghamton University. I study there during my winter break. And I get to observe the strength and conditioning coach. That's where I was from. That was my hometown. So I'm like, how can I make good use out of this break? Let me go talk to the strength coaches there. I go talk to the strength coaches. They go, you know what, this is great, but it would be even better if you could see when the college students were in town and you could see what it's like when this is lively in here. And the assistant strength coach, she said, Brandon, where do you go to school? I said, I go to school in North Carolina, about an hour from Raleigh. She says, if I were you, I would reach out to the big 3 schools. So what's down there? NC State, Duke University, University of North Carolina. So I reach out to the Duke strength and conditioning coach for the golfers. He responds back. He says, Brandon, sure. I'd love to have you come up and spend the day. So 4 a.m. comes, it's an hour-and-a-half drive to Duke. 4 a.m. comes, I gotta be there for a 6 a.m. workout. Eyes are groggy, college students. I said, screw it, I gotta go learn from my top 10 list. And I was excited. So I drive up there, I get to the 6 a.m. workout, and he huddles the whole golf team around. And he said, this is Brandon Godoris. He's from Methodist University. And he has a program that he started while he's in college. We should be honored that people like him want to come see what we have going on in our program. What? You know, I'm like this. Are you kidding me? You should be honored that I'm saying. I'm like, I'm honored seeing you right here. And so he spent the whole day with me. This guy spent the whole day with me. At the end of the day, he said, Brandon, here's the program of all of our golfers. So there I am. I got the programs for all the Duke University golfers. He introduced me to the golf coaches as well. And now I'm thinking, okay, I got some stuff to try with my friends. So I would go to college, and then I just started training my friends at 6 a.m., at 10:30. I had 2 different group sessions my junior year. And all of a sudden, I was starting my own program. University of North Carolina basketball strength and conditioning coach. I get introduced to him because I reached out to this guy, Al Vermeil. Al Vermeil was the strength coach for the Bulls in the 90s. You know who he is, you're shaking, yeah. He was the strength coach for the Bulls in the 90s when Michael Jordan was there. So I reached out to Al Vermeil because he was big in the TPI network. And he said, Brandon, the reason I called you is because I don't do emails. He said, where do you live? I said, North Carolina. He says, great. A former intern of mine is a University of North Carolina basketball strength and conditioning coach. He said, why don't you go learn from him? So I reach out to him. He says, sure. After the end of the season, I'll spend a bunch of time with you. So now I go up to UNC, and I get to spend a half a day with the University of North Carolina basketball strength and conditioning coach. You think I learned a little bit that day? Yeah. Why? Because the power of networking. If I had never gone to these conferences, I would have never known about Al Vermeil. If I didn't know about the top 10 rule, I would have never reached out to him and got that opportunity to learn from Jonas. So now, the Duke University strength and conditioning coach, he interned at Mike Boyles, and he starts telling me, hey, this is the place where you got to go this summer. So I said, all right, apparently Mike is the best in the industry. Let me go learn from him. What happens? They get, what? Chris, how many applications do they get for interns? Well over 100? Yeah. So what happens? I don't get accepted. So what do? I follow up. I say, hey, I'm going up there. I'm working at a golf course. I would love to figure out how to work there for an internship as well. And this guy, who I believe he's speaking tomorrow, Brendan Rierick, was the head of the internship program. And I emailed him. I said, I really want to intern there. I don't need any money. And he said, I'll tell you what, we can't give you housing, but we'll give you a spot. Yeah. My video, by the way, was absolutely awful. I look back at it, I'm like, who is that guy? But because I followed up and said, hey, I want to learn from you, I'll do whatever it takes, he gave me an opportunity. Now here's the thing. These internships, there's like 25 people that are interning at Mike Boyles. So what did I do? I said, hey, I'm getting out of school in the beginning of May. Can I start early? He said, sure. So for an entire month before all the other interns got there, now I'm one of the main interns. There was only one intern because the spring was closing out, and they actually needed my help. So now I'm learning at an accelerated rate. By the time the interns got there, I already knew a lot of the programming. Why? Because I asked. You're going to meet so many people this weekend that can help you get these opportunities, that can help you grow your business, that can help you get more clients, that can help you get connected to the dream person that you want to collaborate with, but you won't if you don't ask. I love that. I love when people finish what I'm about to say. It makes me feel like I'm a singer and they're singing my words. So with that said, when Chris said the power of networking was one of my favorite talks ever, I reached out to Chris. I said, can you tell me why that was one of your favorite talks? I didn't ask him for an opportunity to speak. I said, can you tell me why this was one of your favorite talks? And we had a great conversation on the phone that day. And I told him, I said, let me work on this. I've been working on my humor. I've been working on my comedy. And most importantly, I believe in this message so much that I want to deliver this someday. And 2 years later, here we are talking on the power of networking. You clap it up for that. So the first thing I wanted to talk about today is getting over the fear of what if. What if this person doesn't like me? What if I babble my words? What if that person doesn't even talk to me? Well, what if they do? What if that person changes your life? What if that person connects you with the person that you're looking to get connected with? What if that does happen? Why do we have the fear of what if? We have the fear of what if because we're human. We are human and we have emotions. We have feelings. It's okay to be fearful of what other people think. But what if it's more risky to not ask? than it is to ask? What if it's more risky to not talk to someone than it is to try to talk to someone? So, when I was 22 years old, I used to look forward to going out on Friday nights with the boys. We used to have this bar called Brother Jimmy's, and it was one of my favorite things to do. Why? Because we could talk to the ladies. So I was the guy who, I lacked so much confidence that I would wait for my friends with the confidence to go talk to the girls, and then I would shimmy my way in there and go talk to them. But one day, I was like, this has got to stop. This has to stop. Because there was two beautiful girls right next to me at the bar, and I couldn't even look at their direction because of the fear of rejection. And I said, I do not want to be that guy the rest of my life. So not too long after that, I see this cute girl at the end of the bar. She was a 10 out of 10 on a bad day. And guys were coming up to her left and right, and then they would just walk away. So I said, you know what? Instead of trying to use a pickup line or something like that, I want to go and learn from this girl. So I go up to her and I say, hey, I'm just curious. I see all these guys coming up to you, and then they just kind of walk away after, and I'm pretty sure it's not because of you. And she said, and I said after that, I said, what is it that you look for in a guy? And she said, you know, it's funny that you asked that. I've had a long week of work. I'm out here with my girlfriend. I'm trying to have a good time. If you want to know what I look for, I want a good drink. I want to laugh and a break from these weirdos asking me what I'm passionate about. I said, I get it. I get it. So I went on this journey to try and be a funny guy after that. I was clearly not funny enough that night, but that sparked my interest to try and figure out how to add more humor into conversations. And now for the last 2 years, I've been doing stand-up comedy, and in 3 weeks, I'm doing my third YouTube stand-up special. I used to be so fearful of what people thought by just thinking about what I was going to say. Not even what they thought. What should I say to this person? I used to go to the Perform Better summits, and I would sit there in the cocktail hour for 5 minutes thinking about someone I wanted to talk to, and I couldn't figure out what to say. I used to be at the bar, and I would see someone I wanted to talk to, and I would sit there. I couldn't figure out what to say. So I started buying all these programs, and I realized that the best compliment you could give someone is to just go up and say, hi, what's your name? Because it's a compliment when someone has such a presence about them that you want to go up and introduce yourself. Greg Rose was a speaker today. I remember meeting him when I was younger. He was a guy that I idolized. There was a line of about 20 people. My heart was beating so fast waiting in this line to go meet him. I could barely get a word out of my mouth by the time I said whatever I said. But as soon as I said it, he calmed me right down, and we had a great conversation that day. And I still think about the advice that he gave me that night. But I started getting over the fear of what if and just started going for it. And I highly encourage you all at this conference, at the cocktail hour, to just go and introduce yourself to people. Don't even have expectations about the conversation. Literally, you can just say, hey, what's your name? I'm Brandon. We met 2 years ago at the Providence conference. First time we've seen each other since. We chopped it up for a good 5 minutes while we weren't sure if you all would show up or not. So when I started challenging myself to be able to meet new people, I would put a target for the day. And 5 people was a great target for me. I said, if I can meet 5 new people in a day, I think I'm on the right track. Now, if I wasn't going to a restaurant, if I wasn't going to a social setting, this challenge would be very hard. So one day, I had 3 people I met, and I'm like, where can I go to meet 2 more people? And so I was driving by the Whole Foods, and I literally stopped into the Whole Foods, and I introduced myself to the stocker and the cashier. And I was like, there's my 5. So whenever I was out at the bar in a social setting and I would challenge myself with this, the first one was always the hardest. But then once I got the first, it was always so much easier. So I get it. I get the fear But just understand, if we could just start with one, it's going to get a lot easier after that. I hear a lot about AI and how it's taking over this world. Listen to me. If you take one thing away from this presentation, there's one thing that AI will never replace, and that is human connections. We have moments when we need someone to call and talk things out with. We have moments in our life where all we need is a hug, and that energy from someone's heart makes us instantly feel better. The one thing AI will never be able to replace is human connection. And you have the ability, every single one of you in this room, from the back to the front to the middle to the side, you have the ability to connect with people. And that is the one thing that is going to separate the people who make it in this era versus the people who don't, is their ability to communicate with each other. AI is going to replace lazy people. AI will not replace people who can connect. It won't. Why? Because it's an emotion, it's a feeling that all humans need. I was at the Saratoga races. This is in upstate New York. They had the Belmont there, but they also have a bunch of races throughout the year. I was at the Saratoga races last weekend, and I'm talking to my friend, and he goes, "Do you think the trumpeter is real? Or do you think it's just AI generated and they played on the speaker?" I said, the trumpeter has to be real because it's an experience that captivates this event. But we had no idea. This place was so big, we weren't near the track for quite some time. All of a sudden, we see this guy in this red vest playing the trumpet near where we were sitting. And he's doing impromptu trumpet drills in front of everybody. And so when he comes by our area, we're like, "Oh my gosh, you're real!" And he's like, "Yeah. He's like, "What do you want me to play?" And I was with a Buffalo guy, and he did, "Hey, hey." And it was so fun chopping it up with this guy. And this guy was the guy we kept talking about in the car ride back the next day. Why? Because it was an experience. And humans have the ability to experience things, to connect, to love, to hate, to admire. Later that night, we actually saw him at the bar. It was packed. This place he couldn't move, and there was a live band, and there he was playing the trumpet. So when he was walking by on his break, we went and said hi to him, and he loved us. We're friends on Instagram now. When I was younger, I went to this personal development conference, and it was run by a guy who's a billionaire now, and he said, "Would you rather have $1 billion or 1 billion friends?" Think about that right now. Would you rather have $1 billion or 1 billion friends? Both, right? I was like, oh, I'd rather have, my dad's a financial advisor. I was like, I've been taught investing my whole life. I was like, I'd rather have $1 billion. I'll put it away. I'll be set. And he goes, y'all are thinking the wrong way. If you have 1 billion true friends, take away your limitations. Oh, you can't meet 1 billion people. If you have 1 billion true friends, and you ask them each for $10, you, in the snap of a finger, have $10 billion. So after that, I said, you know what? I'm going to try and do my best to get friends. Maybe not 1 billion, but a massive amount. So in 2021, I was like, there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity right now. Nobody seems to be having in-person events. I said, why don't I have an event? And this was when I started transitioning from personal development, or from fitness to personal development. I decided to have a personal development event called Map Your Way to Financial Freedom. I hated the name, but it was an event that got people into the room. There was about 72 tickets sold to this event. 32 of them were scholarship tickets from my fitness clients that they said, we love what you're doing. Get some people who can't afford this to come. And this was after the event. There was about 40 people there hanging out. We went out to dinner after. And this event changed everything for me because the people in there started to say, what's next? And I'm on the phone call with my mentor, Thomas Plummer, and he says, Brandon, I think you're on to something here. He said, I think you're on to something. I think you should start teaching workshops. I think you should start teaching people how to speak. I said, that's your thing. Why would you tell me to do that? He said, trust me, just start doing it. Gives me no framework or anything. He just says, start doing it. I just brushed this aside. For 2 months. And then 2 months later, I was crazy enough to take him up on that. And now I've been able to travel all around the country, Toronto, Chicago, Laguna Beach, California, Austin, Texas, New York, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, where I live, teaching workshops. And I've been gaining closer to 1 billion friends along the way. I'm still not quite there. So as I close the what if section, what if you just tried making more friends instead of worrying about making more money? Do you think that would work out for you? Yeah. So now that you understand getting over the fear of what if, let's talk about the benefits of social integration. Now this is one of my favorite parts. If you came here for one thing in this workshop, wait till you hear this. In 2020, my buddy sends me a TED Talk. It was so boring that I put it to the side, but I kept listening to the audio and I was typing something on my computer. What happens when a YouTube video completes?
It goes to the next one.
It goes to the next one. So the next one starts playing, and apparently at that time AI was getting pretty good because it seemed to speak right to what I've been thinking about for the longest time. And this lady, Susan Pinker, she starts talking about the #1 key to longevity. And she starts saying how it's not what we typically think. She says, it's not the air quality. It's not whether you have hypertension or not. It's not whether you work out or don't work out. It's not whether you eat right or don't eat right. It's not whether you smoke or drink. I'm like, well, what is it? What is it? And then she says the #1 key to longevity is social integration and close relationships is a close second. I said, I think you're right. And this whole talk, she talks about the blue zones, which is the areas where people live longer. And she actually went to the blue zones to actually meet these people. And she started to see common trends that dealt with social integration and close relationships. And I really resonated with that because my grandparents, they spent 70 years together. There they are right there. They spent 70 years together. And when I would go visit them in Las Vegas, I was so fascinated that at dinner, they always had dessert at the very end. And my grandfather ate cereal in the morning, which all you nutrition people, like apparently that's the worst thing in the world now, right? And so I said, why did these people spend 70 years together? And I remember my dad telling me when I was younger that my grandparents moving out to Las Vegas added 15 years to their life. And that really resonated with me because in upstate New York, all their friends were dying. When they retired, they moved to Las Vegas. And what happened? They made new friends. They got to go to shows. My grandfather loves gambling, so he would play $20 blackjack tournaments that would occupy him the whole day. And he would make friends with the people there. Everybody knows Vegas is a big buffet place, right? You could talk to them about free buffets for a half a day. And all of a sudden, they had this whole new life to them. And it really clicked to me that the #1 key to longevity is not what most people think. It's close relationships and social integration. So I made that a big focus going forward. And in the pandemic, I remember thinking this. I don't know what you all were thinking in the pandemic, but I did 4 months where I listened to everything that they said. I would quarantine, I would sit in my room, and I did barely anything besides work and virtual stuff. Why, if I'm taking care of my body, I'm eating right, I wasn't drinking at that time, like why do I feel mentally the worst I've ever felt in my life? It's because I wasn't getting around people. And so I told myself, I would rather die than live in a box the rest of my life. And so after that, I said, I'm going to focus on getting around people. I heard this story in Think and Grow Rich, The Power of the Mastermind. It talked about how when two brains come together, a magical third gets created that helps come up with ideas and solutions that help solve problems that never would have solved if those two brains didn't come together. So I said, you know what? I got some close friends. I said, you guys want to meet once a week and talk about our goals? They said, yeah, let's do it. About 12 people hopped on, about 10 people left. And we picked up a bunch of people along the way. And now for 5 years, I meet with a group of about 4 to 7 people every week. We meet for a half hour, we go over our commitments for the week, and then we share a win for the week. And we meet up in person all the time. Dr. Joe Dispenza was one of the guys that I heard talking about disease in a different way during this time. He started talking about how you could cure diseases just by the way that you think. And I said, I think I want to go learn from this guy, because every time I turn on the news, it's negative, 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 negative. And this guy, positive, 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 positive. So I said, let me go learn from this guy. So y'all know, as a personal trainer, it's very hard to take 7 days off. For however many years, 10 years, I was Monday through Saturday. And it was so hard for me to I would come to the Perform Better Summits, but it was hard for me to even take those 3 days off. But I said, you know what? I gotta go down there. I said, I gotta go down to Orlando, Florida, where things are normal. And so I went down there in April 2021. And there's 1,300 people in this auditorium. And there we are, learning from Dr. Joe Dispenza. If you don't know who he is, he's a guy that talks a lot about meditation, he talks about mindset, but he also got in an awful bike accident, and he was able to walk again when the doctors said you would never be able to walk again. And he was able to cure a lot of his movement and paralyzation issues through the way that he was thinking. So I'm not here to talk about that. I'm just here to talk about the energy that I felt in that room that day. There I am, 1,300 people, and we're deep into meditation. And listen, I'm not the biggest fan of meditation, but I'm a big fan of feeling good. And so we're in this group meditation, and he said, you see that feeling that you feel right now? He said, don't let it go. Remember it. And the number one thought that went through my mind is the only way that I cannot let this feeling go is by getting in rooms with like-minded people. So I focused on doing that the rest of my 4-year path after that. And people ask me, Brandon, like, what really lights you up? And I said, getting around plus ones. What do you want to do for your birthday? I said, you know what? I want to teach a workshop. I taught a workshop on my birthday this year. It was my favorite birthday celebration I've ever had in my life, because I was around the people who I've been growing with. I was around the people who want to talk positively instead of negatively. I give this slide a drum roll. Give it a little drum roll. So I started thinking that math was overcomplicated. I took algebra, like math was my #1 subject, but I never heard a math teacher talk about math the way that I looked at it. I said 1 + 1 = 2. 1 - 1 = 0. 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. 1 - 1 - 1 = -1. And so my first conference that I hosted, I was not the best speaker. But I said, if I could talk about this equation, maybe it will get some plus ones with me along the way. And I started explaining to them that I think a big reason why people are depressed, I think a big reason why people don't make the money that they want, I think a big reason why people don't make the connections that they want, why they limit beliefs, is because they hang around too many -1s. People who turn down their dreams. People who say, why would you do that? People say, why would you travel to Long Beach, California to go to a fitness conference? I said, but what about those +1s that you meet at those conferences? And they start talking to you about your business. They start talking to you about your vision. They start making you feel like you're actually onto something. They nod their head when you talk about your goals. I was like, if we could get around more of those people, the sky's the limit. Listen, I'm not a doctor, but I think depression could be cured if more people started talking about things that were positive. If we could talk about how we could grow, if we could talk about how we can connect, if we could talk about how we could develop, we all of a sudden come up with solutions. They say things are caught, not taught. Imagine if we just embraced positivity more. Imagine if we just embraced human connection more. How much more do you think our younger generation would be set up for success? Probably quite a bit. Anybody know Debbie Downer? Debbie Downer is someone who you go out to dinner with at night, and she starts complaining about her boss the entire time. She starts talking about how her ex did this, this, and this, versus the guys at Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning and the ladies. We would get together on Tuesday nights for dollar burger nights. And we would chop it up. We would have beers. We would get pickles that made the burgers go from $1 to $3. And we got to hear each other's stories about how they ended up where they were. There's probably about 25 people that I interned with in 2014 when I interned at Mike Boyle's. There was probably about 10 of us that would consistently meet up at night. It wasn't because we didn't invite the other people. It's because they didn't see the value in getting around plus ones. And that was how I started to get people that I could grow with. And you all are around a lot of plus ones this weekend. And you have the ability to continue to connect with them. Now, I'll leave this section with this story. When I started to develop this concept of social integration, I started thinking more and more about the next steps in my career. And in 2021, I was at a workshop. It was called the 10X Exit, where they had us thinking about the exit of our business the entire time. And I started thinking, I said, if I'm going to build a big business, I knew what it took to get really good in the fitness industry. If I'm going to build another big business, it's probably going to take another 10 years to get to the top. I said, what do I want that process to look like getting to the top of the mountain? And I said, I want to climb that mountain with a massive group of people. Because I don't just want to get to the top. I want us to get to the top. So it was that day I wrote on a napkin my $1 billion business model. And I said, I want to have the most impactful education system in the entire country. My goal is to have 10,000 student universities across 10 of the best cities in the United States. And get around a heck of a lot of plus one energy. People say, is this going to be all virtual or is this going to be brick and mortar? And I said, listen, I don't know if it's going to be brick and mortar or whatever it is, but it's going to be in person. I said, we are going to be in person. We're going to be connecting as humans because that's what we need. But I said, here's the catch. The students are only going to go to school for about 5 hours a week. They're going to intern about 25 hours a week, where they actually go into a company that they're interested in working for. And when they go to the classes, we're going to teach them how to interact. We're going to teach them how to go out of their comfort zone. We're going to teach them the things that they need when they're in the real world on their own. But then I said, here's the big thing that everybody's going to talk about when it finally happens. I said, on Fridays, there's only going to be one class. And that one class is going to be Fired Up Fridays. And instead of the thousands of students going into the arena to watch a little three-point shot, they're going to go into that arena to be able to see an inspiring speaker who has gone after some incredible things in their life. I've heard too many times people say, yeah, the problem with college is people don't learn from the people who've gotten the results that they want. Well, don't worry. I'm going to bring some of the top people in the world that these students can get inspired from. And I'm hoping that some of those people I bring back when that finally happens is the people I connect with here today. My goal is to grow together with as many people as possible. And I hope it's yours too. Okay, now that we talked about social integration, now that we talked about getting over the fear, let's talk about how to actually approach someone. You're going to do this a lot tonight. So where do you actually go? Well, I took this personal development course back in the day, and they talked about how you can actually approach an open conversation, and you shouldn't approach a closed conversation. I know this sounds so basic, but look at the opened one right here to the left. That's one that you can go into and you say, oh, this looks like a fun conversation. What did I miss? You could go in there and just shake all three of their hands and say, hey, how's it going? I'm Brandon. Nice to meet you. And 99% of the time, don't quote me on that statistic, but try it out yourself, you will probably get in on that conversation. The conversations you probably will not get on are the closed conversations. So if someone's face-to-face with someone, that's a no-no. That's where you're going to lose your confidence, because you're going to be like, well, why didn't that person talk to me? Because it's a closed conversation. It's not for you. The open conversations are the one for you. I see this all the time. Two people are at the bar, they're closed off, and then people try and talk to them. Listen, when you approach someone from behind, people think you're a creep. They get scared. They're like, what is going on right now? Sometimes they don't even want to look. When you approach someone, you can simply just go at a 30 to 45 degree angle and, hey, Antonio, nice to meet you. And all of a sudden, it welcomes things up. You could go face on, but it is a little bit more awkward. It's not totally wrong, but if you go at a little bit of an angle, it's going to open that up a lot more. And most importantly, have fun. People love talking to others who have fun. I used to get so sick and tired of meeting girls at the bar, and we would exchange names. The first question that they would ask, so what do you do? It's like, listen, whether I say I'm a CEO of a company or a male stripper, there's an automatic judgment. So I just started having fun with these girls when I would meet them. And so one day, I meet this one girl, and we go, hey, what's your name? Blah, blah, blah. Right away, she says, so what do you do? And I said, well, I'm actually in the adult film industry. She goes, you're in the adult film industry? I said, girl, keep your eyes up here. That's only for my clientele. And she could not stop laughing after that. The entire next 15 minutes, she asked me about what the production was like. She was asking me, hey, like, what's the acting like? How do you communicate this? How do you communicate that? She said, is there like a break room where you actually go hang out? And we started talking for quite some time. And it was fun. It was fun. Later that night, I'm not too far from her. A guy comes up to her. They exchange names, and he goes, what do you do? She goes, oh, I'm actually in the adult film industry. And they start dying, right? So I'm not saying that to lie. I'm saying it to loosen up and have some fun. When you go to the cocktail hour, it could be very simple. It's like, oh man, I've been thinking about going back to Bud Lights for some time, but I don't know about those commercials back in the day, right? So you can joke around with things. Like whatever you want to say, it's like, oh, that's a nice beer, but I've been drinking wine lately. I'm more of a Merlot guy, right? And you can just have fun. Like, I can't tell you what the right thing or wrong thing to say is, but if you have fun, people will reciprocate that. If you're making people feel like they're on an interview, it's going to be like, all right, where can I go there? Me and Matt were talking in the Q&A room. It was one of my favorite conversations that I've ever had. If you get a chance to, he's speaking right now, but if you get a chance to meet him, just a great guy. We were just talking shop with the two guys we were talking with the whole time. And there was a mix of fitness questions, and there was a mix of just talking about life. My mentor, Tom Plummer, he used to tell me, he said, Brandon, the reason why I like hanging out with you after these summits is because you know how to turn it off. He says, sometimes I'll go to these dinners and people are just grilling me with business question after business question after business question after I've already answered 3/4 of these questions during the workshop for the last 2 days. He said, if they want to ask me those questions, they can book a call with me and I could spend all the time that they want on that. He said, when I'm out here having a glass of wine, I want to live life. I want to have a good time. And for those of you, if you've never gone to Tom's Speaker School, I highly recommend, because you go out there, Chris takes care of you. Chris, I think you started way over delivering in those. Like, all of a sudden we're getting lunch, we're getting dinner. I don't even know how much that dinner cost, but I know it was quite a bit of money. Why? Because they want to take care of you, and they want to show you that there's another side of life besides just this, right? So have some fun. I was at Sunday football, and I was with a group of about 10 people. This is probably 5 years ago. And this one girl, her name was Sonia, she said, Brandon, you're really fun to hang out with, but every time I'm with you, I feel like I'm on an interview. She said, you just ask so many questions. And so I started researching ways to have a conversation without asking questions after that. And so I realized that if you just pause for 3 seconds, it's a lot easier for that person to actually want to continue the conversation. So sometimes today you could just try that and just pause, and you'll see that person will just keep talking and keep talking. At the Saratoga racetracks, when we went to the after party, I was talking to this one girl, and she was talking the whole night. And then at the end of the night, she goes, wow, you're a man of very little words. I'm like, yeah, in my head, you didn't give me a chance to talk. So if you just pause, a lot of times it's very easy to get someone to keep wanting to talk to you. Now there's this thing called mirroring that I learned from this guy, Chris Voss, from Never Split the Difference. Yeah. So great book, Never Split the Difference. Yeah. And he talks about mirroring. So if you're at the cocktail hour and someone says, man, this was such a great day, you could literally just say, great day? Oh my gosh, I was at Rachel Cosgrove's hands-on, and she was having us do the sandbag. We were putting it around our head, and all of a sudden they can't stop talking. And what did I do there? They said, oh, it's been such a great day. All I did was say, great day? Yeah, oh my gosh, it was so much fun. We were doing the sandbags. All of a sudden we were doing the swings with them. I didn't even know you could do that. So that's what a mirror is. Now a label is it seems like, it sounds like, it feels like. So what's an example of this? How was your weekend? Oh, I was at the Taylor Swift concert. Sounds like you had a good time. Oh my gosh, you have no idea. We waited 3 hours to get these tickets on Ticketmaster. And when we finally got the tickets, we said, we are going to live it up when we go there. And so when we got there, not only did we sing every single song for the 3-hour stretch, but we also got the pink cowboy hats that we put in our drink, and we just had such a blast. I actually met a girl at a concert, a Zach Bryan concert, that she brought the pink cowboy hat to put on her drink there, because she had just gone to the Taylor Swift concert right before that. So you can use that tonight. It seems like, it sounds like, it feels like, and it makes it so much easier for that person to keep talking. Now, as we close this third section, I want to be a little contradicting right here to tell you the questions that you should ask tonight, because you can ask good questions. And if you listen to what I'm about to say, you're going to understand how to make $1 million without any money or any connections initially. So I bought the most expensive ticket to this conference 2.5 years ago, and it was an all-access ticket. One of the things we got with that ticket was an opportunity to go this yacht with some of the speakers and the all-access ticket holders. So I go on this yacht, and I start talking to this guy right here. His name's Pace Morby. If you don't know who Pace Morby is, he's arguably the #1 guy in real estate wholesaling on social media. And everybody in that field goes nuts over this guy. So here I am on the yacht, and this guy's in a circle of 4 people with me. And this guy is just gem after gem. I literally pulled out my phone and I just started taking notes by what he was saying. This guy, I think you'll meet one of these people at the cocktail hour today. I think he had a couple beers, so he had some liquid courage. He just kind of stumbles in there. He says, hey, Pace, how do I make $1 million without any money or any connections? He said, oh, that's a great question. I would ask people, what do they have and what do they need? And he gives an example of how when he first got into real estate wholesaling, he didn't have any money and he didn't have any connections. So he would go to these networking events and he would go introduce himself to people. He met this one guy. He says, "Hey, what do you have going on?" He says, "Well, I just got this large sum of money from a deal that came in, and I'm trying to figure out the right place to put it in." He says, "Well, if I can help you find the right deal for that money, would you let me in on it?" He said, "Absolutely." So later that night, he goes and meets another guy. He said, "What do you have going on?" He said, "Well, I got this deal, but I'm just looking for some investors that are trustworthy, that are accredited, that would be willing to fund this." He said, "Well, if I can help you find the right investor, would you let me in on the deal?" He said, "Absolutely." So he connects those guys, and this was in the beginning of 2023. He said, to date, that deal has still made him over $1 million. Crazy, huh? So you can ask people, what do they have going on? What's a goal that you have? What have you been up to lately? And then find a way to figure out what that person needs to be able to hit that goal. And if you can help them fill that need, there could be an opportunity to make money or to connect them with the right person and develop a long-term relationship, which is what we're going to talk about next. This is Perform Better, probably circa 2017. These were the trainers that were a part of the first job that I had. This guy to the left, his name's Mike Gattori. He was my training manager. 6 years after we stopped working together, he said, "Hey, Brandon, I like what you've been doing with this public speaking thing. I want to start working with you." He's been a client for 2 years now. This guy right to the right of me, his name's Q. He took my speaker mastermind last year, almost 6 years after we stopped working together. This guy to the right was my roommate at the Perform Better, and he told me how he wanted to get his PhD. He ended up getting his PhD, and it's been cool to see what he's did. These are relationships that I thought were going to end, but they've continued because we started to stay connected. So let's talk about staying connected. What a lot of you won't know about this picture right here, this is me speaking at the PGA show in Orlando, Florida. This with Giovanni, yeah. So this guy used to be a WWE wrestler. And you see this picture and you probably don't think much of it. But what you would never know from this picture is that 8 years prior to this, I had gone there every single year. I had gone there to study the speakers, to see what they were working on, to see what exercises they said to do, and to follow them on social media to see what I could continue to see in the future. And on the 9th year, I got an opportunity to speak on that stage. Because I was so focused on showing up, all of a sudden, my credentials showed up. And I was top 50 in America at what I did at that time. Yeah. Why? Because I kept showing up. Perform Better. Even after I started switching, I kept showing up to these. I think this is my 7th Perform Better Summit, and it would have been more if it wasn't, for the pandemic era. And now I'm finally speaking here. But I never even worried about speaking here. I worried about getting better. And then I heard an opportunity. Chris said he wanted more people to network more. And I had a conversation with him, and then all of a sudden, I'm speaking here 2 years later. I wouldn't overcomplicate showing up, though, because it can get a little bit overwhelming. When I was in my beginning days as a trainer, I heard this thing that you should go to one personal development event a month. Now, what happens? You start to realize when you want to go to these events, your people who you think are friends don't want to go. So I stopped worrying about asking people to go to events with me, and I started just going, knowing that I would meet like-minded people. And all of a sudden, I would go to these events by myself, and I would make friends with 10 to 20 people by the end of it. So I just started showing up. This was the First Form. I used to go to their Summer Smash series. And then after you go to one event a month, you can think about this one thing. When I'm at these events, should I stay late or should I go home?
Stay late.
And I'm a big fan of showing up early, but what I'm a bigger fan of, if you want to make a lot of money in connections, is staying late. My mentor, Tom Plummer, he used to tell me, he said, Brandon, whenever I'm speaking within 3 hours, come up and see me. So this was probably 6 years ago. He was speaking in Providence, and I go up there. He says, Brandon, I got to go out to dinner with some clients, but meet me at the bar after. I got some stuff I want to talk to you about. Now, he had nothing he wanted to talk to me about except for whatever was on his mind that day that had nothing to do with me, but we had a great conversation. 4 hours later, it's 1 in the morning, and we're sitting there at the hotel lobby. And I said, Tom, I'm really struggling with having 2 companies in one. Because at the time, my business was Warm Heart Fitness and Entertainment. And blending fitness with personal development, it wasn't working. So I said, Tom, can you help me understand what I could call the personal development company? Because I really want to keep this warm heart concept. And he said, sure, let's bounce some names off. So there we are, 1 a.m. in the morning in the hotel lobby. He's name after name after name after name. And then eventually he says, how about life? How about Warm Heart Life? I said, that's it. That's it. Because I stayed late, I was able to find a name for my company that clicked. And 6 years later, that's still my company. Those of you who know who these people are, they're the Hormozis, right? Mid-30s, $100 million plus business. If you study their material, they talk about how important it is to do the rule of 100. Because what happens when you leave here? You make all these connections, and then you probably won't see people for a while. But you do have what? You do have what to stay connected with people?
Social media.
Thank you as I grab that water. You have social media, right? So the rule of 100 is you should spend 100 touches or minutes for content creation a day until you get to 100. So I know that could sound a little bit confusing, so I'll break it down to how I do it. So 1 touch is an email, a text, a comment on social media, a phone call. That's 1 touch. So you could do 100 of those, or you could combine that with content creation. So 1 minute for content creation, it's 1 minute. So if you do 60 minutes, that's 60 towards that 100. So me, I do 40 minutes of content creation a day, 60 minutes, and then I do 40 touches a day, Monday through Friday. Am I 100% now? But I'm probably 95% on these. And so every day, Monday through Friday, I know I gotta do 40 touches. Now, if you're gonna comment on social media for one of those touches, make sure you make it a genuine comment, not that fire emoji, right? Yeah, so this is Jill, and she is a matchmaker. So I said, Jill, it's amazing to think about the amount of people that have met or connected through your services over the years. Thank you so much for doing what you do. What does she do? She pins it, she comments on it, and then the next time I see her, she comes up and gives me a big hug. Why? Because I put a genuine comment. Listen, you could pay a lot of money for people to do your social media. If you want to make a lot of money organically, this is what you do. This is how I monetize social media. I engage. And what happens? When you engage, people get a lot more excited to see you. Jesse Itzler talked about this thing called the 3 C's. Compliment, congratulate, console. A great way to engage with people is to compliment. You saw a version right there that I did with Jill. Console could just be like, hey, I saw you're having an event this weekend. I'm going to make sure to share it to see if we can get more people to come. Console is showing up. Yeah, go ahead.
What was the 3 C's one time?
Yeah.
Console, compliment, and what is it?
And then I'm going to say the third one in a second. Yeah, so console is showing up. So someone has a loss in their family. Sometimes just giving them a call and saying, hey, just want to check in, make sure you're all right. That's consoling right there. But that's also one touch right there. You're just trying to be a genuine friend, but again, that is helping you stay connected and build these long-term relationships. Now, the third C is congratulate. People work hard for their accomplishments. When you take a second to acknowledge it, typically they're going to appreciate that. So when I scroll through Instagram, I hear so many people talk negatively about social media. It's because you don't use it the right way. I scroll through social media and I'm looking for opportunities to do these three things: compliment, congratulate, and console. And so when someone has a baby, I say, oh, congratulations, so happy for you too. When someone gets married, I say, oh, congratulations, so happy for you too. When someone speaks at the Perform Better Summit, I say, oh, that's so awesome that you did that, congrats. When someone has a birthday, they made it another year around the sun, happy birthday. It's very simple. But it's amazing how much more people get excited to see you when you engage with them on social media throughout the year. This couple in the middle, Zach and Kate, I barely see them throughout the year, but they've been to plenty of my events in the past. I run into them at the coffee shop. They have their dog there, saying hi to the dog. And Zach goes, how's it been going lately? I said, I'm actually on pace for my record month. I got the early bird special for my conference. It's coming to a close and it's been working. He said, oh, can you send me the link? We want to go. I didn't even have to sell him. I was just talking about it at the coffee shop. I sent him the link. Him and his wife bought 2 all-access tickets to my conference that day. The easiest sale I could have asked for. But what do? I comment on their posts throughout the year. And they take notice of that. So you all are at the Perform Better Summit. It's a great thing, isn't it? Connecting with people, being inspired. I was so inspired, I said, I got to give people something to look forward to, too. So after my first conference, that it was what it was, I started continuing to have conferences. And it started to bring quite a community of people into them. And what happened? Every year, people would be like, oh, it feels like a family reunion. It feels like a family reunion. People would always be like, Brandon, there's people from all over the country coming here. How the heck did you pull this off? I said, because for years, I focused on going to one event a month. And I would meet people from all over the place, and I would go to the cocktail hours, and I would talk to them, and I would stay connected with them on social media. And then when they saw I was having an event, and they saw how hard I was working on to promote it, and they saw the guest speakers that were coming, and they saw how much fun we were going to have, they said, you know what? I'll fly from California. California is... I've developed a following out here because I started doing events out here. And now when I have big events in Connecticut or New York, a lot of them fly out to come to these events. But listen, you don't have to have 200 plus people events. You can keep it pretty simple. When I was a personal trainer, I said, you know what? I want to get some people together in a positive way. So I had a musician showcase night. I love the music industry. I thought I was going to be in the music industry. Thought I was. But pandemic kind of shifted that. And so in 2019, I said I'm going to have a musician showcase night. And I'm going to invite all my clients. I partnered with a local nonprofit where people could buy a ticket or they could bring non-perishable goods. And what happened? I had probably 60 to 80 people there. I looked good in my community because we partnered with a nonprofit. We did an interview with them. And believe me, I lost a lot of money on that event, but it was a big success because of the way that it was done. We walk in there the next day with like 8 boxes of non-perishables, and it was a great time. But what happened? A lot of my clients shared that event with other people. A lot of my friends shared that event with other people. And all of a sudden, I started meeting more people. I have a business coaching client. He still works with me. He was looking for more organic referrals. He's a personal trainer. He was looking for more organic referrals. So he started having happy hours where he would buy the first round for his clients, but he encouraged them to bring a friend so that he can meet them. So very simple. Events don't have to be very overwhelming. They can be very, very simple. But let's be honest. Y'all have a happy hour that you want to go to. And I want you there too, but I do have one last story to tie this all in. Is that okay? If we share that one last story? All right, good. Because I'm going to share it anyways. So this is Grandfather Charlie. I talked about him earlier. I never thought that I definitely wanted to have kids. Like if you were to ask me a couple months ago, I would have said, hey, if I find the right partner, if it aligns, maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. Until Easter Sunday this year. See, my grandfather, he flew back from Las Vegas because he knew he didn't have much longer. He had got diagnosed with stomach cancer, and he didn't want to get the treatment. 97 years old, why would you want to do that? So he comes home, he fights his way. My aunt and my uncle, they bring him back to upstate New York. And he had one mission. That was to have one last conversation with the people that he cared about the most. And so he comes back to upstate New York, and we go in there on Easter Sunday, and I was shocked because he was still sharp as a rock. You could have a conversation with him like it was yesterday. And so as I'm talking to Grandfather Charlie, I realized that he had a different mission for me that day. We had always talked about business all throughout my life, and he was one of the greatest mentors, if not the greatest mentor I've had in my life. But as soon as I walked in there that day, he said, Brandon, you find a girl yet? I said, I've been working on it, but not yet. And he said, okay. And we left that conversation at that. After lunch, I see Grandpa Charlie just sitting on the recliner by himself, and I finish early. So I go over to Grandpa Charlie, knowing that this was probably going to be the last conversation I ever had with him. But he was still with it. So I was so curious about what this guy was going to say at the end of his life. And so I'm sitting there right next to him, and I said, Grandpa Charlie, what's one piece of advice that you would give me personally, and one piece of advice that you would give me professionally? He said, Brandon, I've known you long enough that whatever you go after professionally, you're going to do it. You're going to figure it out. If you don't, you'll figure something else out. He said, you got that part down. You don't need me for that anymore. He said, go find a girl. He said, go find a girl. And for the first time in my life, it connected with me that at the end of your life, the things that you will care about the most are the people that you connect with along the way. This guy had a very successful business career, but he also had a very successful family. And at the end of his life, when he was still with it, he didn't have Alzheimer's, he didn't have dementia, he was still with it, the only thing that he cared about was the people and relationships that he had along the way. And the rest of that night, not that night, he didn't make it that far that night, but the rest of that conversation, he started talking to me about his wife, my grandmother, who passed away 3 years prior. And he started sharing the stories about their life. And I started to see how much this lady meant to him. But I never really knew how much that she meant to him until he passed away and we were at his funeral. And I heard the story of why he didn't want to bury his wife 3 years prior. See, what happened was she got the ashes in the container, and he just couldn't do it. They were about to bury it, and he just couldn't do it. He took it back to the house, and he said, when I die, you're going to put me next to her. And so we go to the funeral, and there it is, their names right next to each other. And my uncle placed them right next to each other to rest. And they were finally back again. And I'm sharing this story with you to close because we have the ability to connect with humans. And that's the only thing we're going to care about at the end of our lives, is the people that we cherish, the people that we connected with. And since then, I've been working with a relationship coach, and I've been learning how to become a man. I've been learning how to attract the lady. And I'm so grateful that that was Grandpa Charlie's last message to me. And I highly encourage you to be the leaders that connects with a lot of great people, so at the end of your life, you can make an impact on someone like Grandpa Charlie did on me. Thank you so much.